Hello there, fellow chess players. My name is 𝐾𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐜𝐸, and today we'll have a look at a motif called Discovered Attack. This is a relatively easy motif, and the idea is that you do not have to prep or reposition your pieces. All it is you look at the position you're in, and if you're able to start aggression, then you start playing your aggressive moves and attacking. And that's basically what a discovered attack is. As a general rule of thumb, you would sacrifice a piece during this tactical maneuver. However, you would either gain it back as a result, or gain a more significant material advantage as a result, or even checkmate your opponent, which is always good. Okay, so let's dive in, and we'll start by looking at this fairly simple example. So for those of you who want to try and figure this one out, just pause the video and see if you can find the winning move for white. The winning move for white is queen takes on h5 check. And after bishop takes on h5, rook to d6 check. The check comes from the bishop, and after, let's say, after bishop to g6, rook takes queen on b6, and white is winning. White is a knight up. How to see this move? You should notice that the white queen is attacking the black knight. Also, you should see that the white bishop is x-raying the black king, but there are two pieces in the way: the white rook and the black bishop. So we know that we can get rid of the white rook easily. All we gotta do is move it to the preferred square, attacking the queen, and provided that the bishop is already gone, it's gonna be check and we win the queen. But how do we move this black bishop? Well, as you can see, a pretty simple way would be just to capture the knight with our queen. And even though we're sacrificing our queen, we know that as a result of this maneuver, we will win it back. However, we will have an extra piece. So, that is that. Okay, so now let's look at this position for black. See if you can find the winning move. The first thing that we should notice is that the square f4 looks very, very good for the black knight. So if the black knight jumps here, he's going to be checking the king, forking the queen, the rook, all sorts of havoc he's causing here. The problem is that this square is defended by the white pawn. Now, let's take a look at the black rook on g file. It is x-raying the white king, meaning that if we move the black bishop and somehow manage to move this white pawn, the very same pawn that is defending the square f4, you see where I'm going with this. Anyhow, if we manage to get this black bishop out of the way and get this pawn out of the way, then the rook is going to be checking the white king. So if we were to take this black bishop out of the way, where would he go? He can take the rook on d3. Seems like a pretty interesting move. Okay, so now let's take a look at how this would actually play out. Knight to f4 check, forcing the pawn on g3 to take the knight, opening the king to our rook. Now I'll show you the most obvious variation, which would be bishop takes on d3 check, check coming from the rook. White has a few moves in this scenario, either to defend with the queen, but the best move would actually be to move the king. The black bishop cannot take the white queen because the white bishop is x-raying the black king. Therefore, the black bishop has to take the white bishop, and after that, check. As you can see in this position, black has a slight material advantage, a rook against a knight, and should be able to win this game. Okay, Let's go back. So, after knight goes to f4, checking the king and the queen, and the pawn is forced to take the knight, in some ways I almost feel like it would be a better move to play bishop to h5 check. The check again comes from the rook, but this way the bishop is attacking the queen, and although the white bishop is still x-raying our king on h7, it is still currently blocked by the rook. So from here, the best move for white would be to block with the queen. Should black capture with the bishop, white just does their usual thing, check, and after king moves, or however black responds, the white rook just takes the queen, and the game is again even. So after queen blocks on g4, we want to capture her without allowing the white rook to move. So we play rook takes on g4 check, and after pawn takes on g4, now we need to get our king away from the x-ray zone, which could be any move really. And then white takes the pawn. So in this position, some would say it is materially not advantageous to have a queen against a rook, a bishop, and a knight. I, however, consider the queen an invaluable piece, and there are ways to win this game, even with just a queen against the three pieces. Let us have a look at a slightly harder position to the previous one. In this position, it is white to move. See if you can find the winning move. Have you found it? The winning move is rook to e4. If rook takes on e4, then queen to c8 check, and black can only delay the inevitable mate from here. Queen to d8, queen takes queen, rook to e8, queen takes rook, check, mate. If black decides to take with the bishop, then queen takes queen on f6, and checkmate is inevitable. If, in this position, black decides to take the white queen, then checkmate comes from rook on e8. And that is that. So, how to see this winning move? First of all, we should notice that the white queen is technically x-raying the square g7, meaning that if the black queen moves and we move our white rook, we can checkmate the black king. Okay, what else do we see? We can see that the black king has no place to go from here because the square g7 is currently protected by our bishop. That means if we somehow manage to get either our queen or rook on the 8th rank, it will be checkmate. We should also notice that black is currently staring down the square e1 checkmate. However, the white queen is defending this square. So the conclusion of this analysis is that we need to try and force either the queen or rook to move away. Rook from the 8th rank and queen from the diagonal a1 h8. And as I demonstrated at the start of this video, rook to e4 is the way to do it. Okay, so now let's look at this position from black's point of view. If you wish, you can pause this video and try find the winning move. I'll give you a little hint. The winning move for black in this position involves two motifs. One being discovered attack, and the other one is distraction. Did you find the winning move? The winning move is queen takes rook on d4. And if queen takes on d4, then rook to e1 checkmate. So, how to find this move? Let's go back. If you look at all the ways black pieces are threatening white, the most obvious one would be rook to e1 checkmate. The only defender of square e1 is the white queen. And on top of that, the black queen has a discovered attack on the white rook. So after capturing the white rook, we are forcing the white queen to either take the black queen, thus distracting it from square e1, or move away. Meaning we just took the rook for free. This position was taken directly from a game played between Avi and Thomas in Hastings in 1934. White to move. See if you can find the winning move. Okay, so before I show you the winning move, I would like to analyze this position with you. What do we see? White wants to checkmate the black king. The white queen could have already done so on g8. However, the rook on f8 is protecting that square. So potentially, if we remove this rook, we can checkmate the black king. So how do we remove the defender of g8? Let's have a look at our connected rooks on the f file, ready to capture the black rook. However, the white bishop is in the way. So what should white do? It is apparent from the situation that we should move the white bishop. And also we should try and keep him on this diagonal a2 g8 so that he keeps staring down no matter where he is. He keeps staring down onto this g8 square. Okay, so where to move him? It really doesn't make much of a difference where you move him in this situation. However, a very classy move would be bishop to d5, and that is the winning move. So let's look at a couple of variations. If after bishop to d5, black plays rook takes on f2, then white plays queen to g8 checkmate. If black plays queen takes on d5, then white plays rook takes on f8, and after queen to g8, queen takes on g8 checkmate. If after d5, rook goes to g6, then rook takes on f8, king to g7, and rook to f7 checkmate. And last variation I want to have a look at is queen goes to g6, similar thing. Rook takes on f8 check, king to g7, rook to f7 checkmate. So, did you find this winning move? Well, that is that. And finally, let's look at this position from black's point of view. So, if black was to move first in this situation, can you find the winning move? Okay. The winning move is rook to g6. If bishop takes on g6, then rook takes on f2. And if rook takes on f2, then queen to e1 check, rook f1, queen f1 checkmate. Okay, let's go back. There's a similar variation in this position. If bishop decides to take the queen, then rook f1 checkmate. So what if after we take rook on f2, white decides to move the rook to g1, protecting the pawn on g2? Then black will just take the bishop on g6 and win the game with an extra piece. Okay, but now let's look at a variation that is a little bit more interesting. Let's say after rook to g6, white plays queen to d2. Then black would continue with rook takes on f7, rook takes on f7, queen takes on g2 check, queen takes on g2, bishop takes on d2 check, forking the king and the rook, and after king moves to g1. If black takes the rook on f1 with check from the black rook, then king takes bishop and the position is equal. Black is one pawn up. That's about it. There is an opportunity to gain a significant material advantage, and that would be bishop to d5 check. Now the bishop controls the diagonal h1 a8, and the rook is checking the king and controlling the g file, leaving the only square for the king to move to, f2. After f2, the white rooks are no longer connected, and bishop can just take on f7. Now we have an extra piece, and there is much less pieces on the board. Definitely a winning game for black. I'd like to show you a game played between Carlos Torre Repetto and Emanuel Lasker in Moscow in 1925. The opening that white played in this game later became known as the Torre attack. Now, isn't that great? Not only do you win a game in style, but you also get a chess opening named after you. Okay, so obviously Torre had white pieces and started with d4, knight to f6, knight to f3, e6, and bishop to g5. Now this is the very essence of the Torre attack, and these starting moves define the opening. Lasker plays c5, e3, and in this position, if black plays queen to b6 or bishop to e7, then they have a strong chance of fending off white's attack. However, in 1925, this opening was very fresh. I would even go so far as to say it has never been played before, but chances are it has. However, it hasn't had that much analytical thought put into it as to what is the best moves, and now we know that these moves could stop white advancing. However, Lasker did not know that, and hence played c takes on d4, e takes on d4, bishop to e7, knight from b to d2. And in this position, the best development for black would be to fianchetto the white square bishop. Instead, for now, black plays d6. And I just want to stress that in this position, d5 is really not an option, because then it would be very difficult to develop the white square bishop on c8, as the pawns would be blocking his, well, development. Anyway, Torre plays c3, knight from b to d7, bishop to d3, b6, knight to c4, bishop to b7. In this position, castling for both black and white is long overdue. Moving forward, queen to e2, queen to c7, and now finally white castles kingside and black castles kingside. From here, white plays rook from f to e1, rook from f to e8, rook from a to d1. As you can see, white is moving up the rooks to the center ranks. This further develops the pieces for white and puts Torre in a better position. So black plays knight to f8 and Torre plays bishop to c1. Now let's go back a move. So why does Torre move his bishop all the way back to the starting position? He probably saw that Lasker could play knight to d5 with the idea to exchange the black bishops. Once the black bishops are gone, white would have a weakness on the black diagonal c1 to h6, allowing the knight to potentially jump to f4. So Torre played bishop to c1. Another thing, no player ever wants to move their pieces back
to the starting position. I would say for me personally, it is very demoralizing when after a few moves I have to move the piece back. Perhaps a better move for Torre would be not to fear the bishop exchange and move the knight from c4 to e3. But that's not the move that was played in the game, and let's keep going. Knight to d5, knight to g5, b5, knight to a3, b4. Now, in this position, the best move for white would be to play knight to b5, attacking the black queen, and after queen moves, to play pawn to c4, both attacking the knight on d5 and fortifying the defense on the white knight on b5. The benefit of this mini maneuver is that white would keep its pawn structure intact. However, Torre decides to take the pawn on b4, knight takes on b4, and queen to h5, attacking both the h7 and f7 pawns. So moving the pawn g6 out is not really an option, because that would create a weakness on the black squares around the black king. So the logical move was played, bishop takes on g5, bishop takes on g5, knight takes on d3, rook takes on d3, and queen to a5. Now notice how the queen is both attacking the white rook on e1 and pinning the white queen on h5, with the idea to move h6 and win the white bishop. So Torre plays b4. Now if the black queen takes the pawn, then the pin is released and the white bishop can go to d2, attacking the black queen and gaining initiative. Lasker decided not to take the sacrificed pawn and go to f5. Rook to g3, h6, knight to c4. The threat is knight takes on d6, forking the rook and the queen. So, queen to d5, knight to e3. And here, black made the last mistake by not taking this pawn on d4 and moving to b5. Now, if you wish, you may pause this video and try find the winning move. Remember that the motif of this video is discovered attack. Did you find it? I knew you would. The winning move is d5. I'm just joking. The real winning move, played by Torre in 1925 in Moscow, was bishop to f6, allowing Lasker to take the queen. You think I'm joking? Nope. Lasker took the queen. After that, rook takes on g7 check, king to h8, rook takes on f7 check, king to g8, rook to g7 check, king to h8, rook to b7 check, king to g8, rook to g7 check. And at this stage, Lasker could probably take another pawn before he actually won back his queen, but he decided not to and just go straight for gaining back the queen. Check, king to h7, rook takes on h5, king to g6, rook to h3, king takes on f6, rook to h6 check, king to g5, rook to h3, rook from e to b8, rook to g3 check, king to f6, rook to f3 check, king to g6, a3, a5, b takes on a5, rook takes on a5, knight to c4, rook to d5, rook to f4, knight to d7, rook takes on e6 check, king to g5, g3, and in this position black resigned. So, how did you like this game? Did you find the winning move? I hope you enjoyed this.